Thank you for being here this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you joining us for this webinar on understanding international customer needs, which is part of our World Class Welcome series of webinars designed for hospitality exports, businesses that are going to be engaging with international travelers while they're here. So again, thank you for joining. So I'm Lori Piper, Assistant Director for Global Resources with the Kansas Department of Commerce. And the slides are advancing on one of my screens and not the other one. So hopefully you're seeing the slides advance and still getting full screen. Global Resources is part of the International Division at the Kansas Department of Commerce. We develop resources to help support our international business ecosystem in the state. And a lot of that has to do with education, professional development, workforce development, along with engaging in diplomacy and working with international partners. In the International Division, we also have export promotion and international investment attraction. So today's kind of a large grouping of topics. We're going to be looking at why focus on international travelers, what are international travelers looking for in their experiences, why do they come here, what do they do. We'll talk a little bit about sports tourism in particular, the importance of appreciating different communication styles, challenges that international travelers experience, and how hospitality businesses and communities in general can help build a really welcoming experience to promote international tourism, hospitality exports, and really develop those positive connections. So first of all, why focus on international travelers? Well, international travelers spend over $250 billion in the U.S. The average international traveler spends over $7,000. We have 1.8 million U.S. jobs supported by tourism exports. So companies, businesses that are here in the U.S. that are providing hospitality and tourism services for those international guests, those are actually considered to be tourism exports or hospitality exports. International visitor spending accounts for 23% of U.S. service exports, and travel and tourism accounts for 8% of all U.S. exports. So these are really important to our economy. They also are important for our communities and for developing interest in our area that can lead to further business opportunities. So those are some of the reasons why international travel is important to think about. So some of the reasons why international travelers come to the U.S. Vacation is important, and some of these overlap, but also visiting friends and family, work, and attending sporting events. And then of our international travelers, about 47% are traveling as part of a multi-generational family group, and 12% are solo travelers. So these are some things to keep in mind as you're thinking about your interactions with the international guests. So given the amount of investment that international travelers make in coming here, particularly if they're not just coming from one of our neighboring countries, but given the amount that they're investing in their time and energy, and the cost and how much they're spending here, many view the trip to the US through a really high value lens. And so they're looking to, like, this is something that's going to be very important to them. They want to know that they're going to have a good experience, a memorable experience, something that's a lifetime experience. A lot of them think of this as a bucket list item. So they're coming here to visit a certain city, or they're coming here to see a certain attraction, or they're coming here to have a particular type of experience, particularly if they've never been here before. For those first-time travelers, this is something that really counts as kind of a bucket list type of experience for them. And they want to be able to share with their traveling companion, share with their family, share their experiences on social media, share when they go back home. And they're looking for authentic experiences. So they don't want to feel like they're having exactly the same experience that they would be having if they were traveling at home. They want something that's different. They want to feel like, they're experiencing something that's authentically American when they come here, or authentically regional when they come here. Then the luxury travelers are also very interested in looking for exclusive and VIP type experiences, particular packages, and then also underlying everything is that the feeling of being welcome is really crucial to their having a positive experience, giving it a high satisfaction rating. And then also, it's very important to whether they decide to come here again, and whether they recommend visiting here to their coworkers and friends and family and neighbors. So when we're going to be going through the types of items that we're looking at, we're going to be thinking about, how can we be helpful, and also how can we be welcoming? So again, I'm thinking about why international travelers come here and what they do when they're here, what they enjoy. There's shopping. So some are coming to shop for luxury items that are less expensive here than they are at home, or items that they can get here that they can't get at home, or things that are really representative of being here and are very different from where they were. I was talking with an international traveler around the holidays who was here on business, and he was really was excited to go shopping for presents for his daughter to bring back home. So shopping might be apparel, might be electronics, might be Americana. Gastronomy and fine dining, that's something that's a really important part of the experience. Visiting national parks and monuments, things that they've heard about, amusement and theme parks, visiting historic locations, guided tours. A significant number of travelers are interested in those, and also attending sporting events. So when we think about that, this gives us an opportunity to think about all of these types of businesses, in addition to the lodging businesses. All of these types of businesses are having opportunities to engage with the international travelers and create positive experiences for them, and attracting international travelers. And then also there are a number of other businesses that are involved in the support, such as transportation businesses. So these are all opportunities to help meet their needs, create great experiences, create memorable experiences that make travelers really feel welcome and want to recommend their travel when they get back home. So sports tourism is a particular niche. It's a high value niche segment. 15% of international travelers are traveling for sporting events, to attend events. Something that we haven't looked at in particular here is people who are traveling to participate in events. But you know, we're with the soccer matches that are going to be here this summer. There's a lot of interest in sports tourism in particular. And within this group, some of the identifying characteristics are having a very strong emotional attachment to the team or the sport, looking for a sense of thrill and excitement, feeling a part of a community of fans, getting to show their loyalty and enjoy that in the community of fans. They're really looking for venue proximity. They want to be able to access merchandise and have opportunities for fan engagement. So again, thinking about the various things that international travelers do when they're here, we can think about, you know, how do these things fit into that? International sports tourists frequently travel in groups, whether they're the multi-generational family groups that we talked about or friends groups. They're often traveling in groups. And one of the things that's really important is having access to clear directions. So whether they're going to pre-match events or pre-game events, or they're going to fan events, or there are multiple events happening at a given time. They want to be able to understand the schedule and directions, and they're often relying on public transit, shuttles, or walking. And so proximity is something that is especially important for this type of group. And the picture that I'm sharing on this slide is one that I took in Dublin last summer. I was able to attend the K-State game in Dublin and get a part of that like fan experience in the seeing the way that the community was really very welcoming to the international guests who were there for that fan experience. For example, with having flags from the different states and the different universities up and showing the colors of the teams that were playing, and asking us questions about where we were from and engaging us in conversation. And then, you know, we saw like lots of groups of people who were wearing the team attire and the team colors, and were very enthusiastic and happy to be there. So this is something you know, to keep in mind is like, you know, how as a community and business as part of a community can you help create those great experiences for the visitors. So going back to international travelers more generally, this is not a comprehensive list of things that are associated with travel in the US, but these are some of the characteristics that are associated. So one of the ways in which the US is thought of is as being culturally diverse. And so a lot of travelers are really interested in experiencing that diversity when they're here. And so communities that have different types of international restaurants or have different international connections or festivals or events. Those are things to let people know about and help connect with. Another perception of the U.S. is that people are very willing to try new things here and have different experiences. And so they're looking for those different experiences, things that are different from what they're going to do at home. Americans are viewed as very friendly and positive and very casual. When we talk about communication styles, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that's something that's also associated with the U.S. A lot of travelers who are coming here are looking for experiences that feel very trendy and modern, whether that's going to be in their shopping experiences or their dining experiences. Doesn't mean that they don't want other types of experiences too, but that's something that's considered important. And then visits to the U.S. are often considered, to be associated with, high energy and adventure, especially like nightlife, or it can be important for younger travelers. For certain visitors from certain regions of the globe, they're looking for outdoor adventure. And then people really associate the U.S. with having a lot of choices and a lot of convenience. So again, choices for dining, choices for shopping, choices for activities, and being able to have the convenience to choose what things they're going to engage in. So those are some things to keep in mind that international travelers are thinking about when they come to the U.S. They've got that high value lens. They're looking to have really memorable experiences. A lot of them have bucket list type items. They want to be able to share that they've had a great time, that they've done something that's memorable, something that they're not getting to do at home, or that's different here from how they do it at home. And so we really want to help try to create those types of experiences. So something to keep in mind is that communication styles vary from one culture to another. And here are some of the ways in which they can vary. They can vary in the degrees of formality. They can vary in terms of how direct or indirect they are in communication. So, for example, a traveler from the UK might say that something was like quite good. And that wouldn't necessarily be a compliment. And so, having some appreciation of the way that different cultures communicate and how feedback is given, whether it's given directly or indirectly, whether it's given immediately or afterward in a review or in writing, having some familiarity with the different cultures that you're engaging with and how they interact can be really important for responding to what they're saying, and also thinking about how you're perceived. So there can also be differences in assertiveness. For some, you have to really pay much more attention to the context and think about the background knowledge, because things are not all going to be, stated verbally or explicitly. For some, they really want the trust and relationship building more than just like direct and efficient communication. And so, for example, a traveler from Argentina might be looking more for in interaction that's more conversational and relationship building, whereas a guest who's from the Netherlands, for example, might be looking for a little bit more efficiency in the communication and a little bit more directness. Also paying attention to the visitors' body language and gestures, and also the ones that we ourselves are using is something that's important. And then being respectful of personal space and maybe not necessarily being so comfortable with touching travelers from other countries. Americans tend to be a little bit more casual and informal, and just generally speaking, international travelers are, on the one hand, they're aware of that from how we're depicted in media and from movies and television shows and social media and so forth. And so on the one hand, they may be like, expecting that and associating that. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're always comfortable with it. So being able to be perceptive and read how an individual is responding is something that's important. And even though we can make some generalizations based on where travelers are coming from, doesn't mean that every individual is going to be exactly the same. And so that the ability to be observant and respond appropriately is something that's important. Some tips for communication. Always be respectful and professional. Sometimes the informality of Americans is viewed as not being fully professional or not being really respectful. So again, starting out with, being respectful and professional is something that's important. And then, following cues. If people, seem to be more comfortable with being a little bit more informal, then that's a way that one could respond. A complaint, not just of Americans, but when people are maybe not as proficient in the language and they're traveling internationally, or maybe they're, even just like, they may be very proficient, but they're dealing with exhaustion, or they've got a lot of different things that they're attending to. Speaking very fast can cause some communication difficulties. So just speaking at a moderate pace, not necessarily like slowly, but not speaking overly fast, making sure to be clear, taking opportunities to confirm understanding. And if there's like any doubts about whether there's some difficulty or lack of clarity in communication, finding ways to rephrase what you've said, or repeating it, and being very patient and polite in the process. And then slang and humor can be misunderstood, and I don't know that we're always even perceptive of when we're using slang, but trying to be a little bit more conscientious about the words that we choose to use, and trying to avoid something that might be misunderstood. And then again, when we're looking at communication styles, humor would be a good place to add, some differences in communication styles. Some groups have much drier humor than others. And so there's a lot of opportunity. Doesn't mean like, don't have a sense of humor, but be careful about it. And then ask questions and be curious. Take the opportunity to, learn about their country or the region or the city that they're from. Do so in a positive way, expressing, genuine desire to learn, instead of, maybe like just assuming that ours way is better, or like approaching it from a critical manner. Like find ways to be positively curious, and get if they're like looking for that warm engagement and relationship building, that's a way to create connection. And then having some kind of language support available. And so it might be having directions that are printed in multiple languages. It might be having translation apps, might be having a staff member or a couple of staff members that are fluent in multiple languages. So like having, some way to have some support when needed. And then also using, welcoming gestures can be, something that can go a long way in making people feel comfortable. So, in addition to differences in communication styles, there can be challenges brought about with language barriers. When people, for example, are used to having signage at home that's in multiple languages, or are used to an environment in which people are regularly fluent in multiple languages. There can be, some challenges that come about with language. Also, service style. So, talked a little bit already about how Americans are often viewed as being very informal and very casual. Can also be perceived as being overly enthusiastic and everything is great. And that can be perceived as, insincere, or not necessarily thoughtful or genuine. Food and diet. So while a lot of international travelers want to have that different experience, experience foods that they're not having at home, having, some regionally authentic foods, that can be difficult when people are traveling, for example, for a couple of weeks at a time, to, always be having foods that are different. And, especially if you're, going from a cuisine that's very, very different. And so, for example, going from a cuisine that's very vegetarian oriented, or very, seafood oriented, to something that's very heavily meat oriented, or going from having foods that are very fresh, and not having a lot of processed foods or sugars, to something that's a lot of processed foods and a lot of sugar. That can be a challenge. And so, being aware of that. Also, travelers, can have very different time zones when they come here. And so, having the ability to have foods, having meals at different times, maybe from when we're always used to serving them. So having that flexibility in terms of when meals are available, also when check-in is available, those types of things can go a long way in helping international travelers. Something that a lot of international travelers perceive is confusion about payments and pricing. For example, surprise when taxes aren't included in the price, or not being certain about what the tipping practices are. So that might be, when is a tip required? When is the service charge already included? How much do I tip? What's kind of the minimum? What's considered exceptional? Those kinds of things. Anything that's like considered a hidden fee, like resort fees or large group fees. Things like that can be viewed as having a lack of transparency. That's something that can be a challenge. And then there also can be challenges having to do with payment methods, like using digital wallets or payment apps. So those are some things to be aware of in terms of challenges for international travelers. Another is distance. So the United States is vast. A number of our states are vast. Kansas is vast. For some international travelers, it's difficult to comprehend how long it takes to get from one city to another, from one side of the state to another. That's something that can be a challenge. And then also the lack of transportation options. So it might be lack of public transportation, or it might be lack of ride sharing apps in certain areas. So those, again, like from a community level and a business level, are things to be aware of. Technology adaptation, for example, the currency for appliances. And then a lot have health and safety concerns. So there's worried about how they're going to pay for their medical treatments, or where they would go for medical treatments in case of an emergency. They often feel more comfortable in kind of known tourist areas where they have a perception that they're going to be safe. Being aware that these are some things that are challenges for international travelers, and that they might want to be able to get some advice on, or some reassurance on when they're traveling. That can be important. So some ways to be helpful. This, again, is not necessarily an exhaustive list, but some ways to be helpful are having signage that's in multiple language, having instructions that are in multiple language. So these might be things like instructions for accessing Wi-Fi. It might be instructions for how to get to places. It might be policies for regarding early check-in or early checkout, or for restaurants, what the cancellation policy is on a reservation, whether a deposit is required, whether reservations are for set durations. A reservation might start at 7 p.m., but does it then end at 9 p.m.? So things like that. And then also trying to keep the language simple, and when possible, using recognizable symbols or common icons to help with that visual comprehension. Again, and then being respectful of cultural differences. So it might be dietary differences, it might be attire differences, it might be practicing of religion. And then also communication, differences in communication styles, which we've talked about. Having maps available to help guests can be incredibly helpful. And so, hotels might have maps that are provided from their local Convention and Visitors Bureau or their local chamber, or they might have their own maps that they've created that identify certain points of interest and also points for transportation. So being able to share those, because it's great to be able to access information on our mobile devices, but it's also really helpful to have somebody who can like pull out a map and say, we're here and like look at these things that are nearby, and this is great, and this is further. But these are definitely things that you should try. Being a source for local information. And so international travelers often want, they'll do their homework in advance, they'll look at reviews, they'll try to figure things out, but they also really want to get feedback on where am I going to get a great steak? Where am I going to have a wonderful local craft beer? Where can I go shopping? What's a really great local bit of scenery, or great local bit of history, or great local bit of culture, or what's some kind of event that's going on that I might not already have heard about. And so being a resource for not only what's going on in your own town, but maybe also some things that are going on in some surrounding communities, so that you can help people like plan itineraries or make adjustments to their itineraries, or, give them feedback on distances and what things are really worthwhile. And then assisting with booking transportation or explaining routes. So transportation to events, transportation back to an airport, transportation to another city or another community if they don't have a rental car. So finding those ways to be helpful in addressing. So they're the challenges that we looked at, and then also the things that they're looking to create and enjoy while they're here. So some other ways to be helpful, if you're a business that requires reservation, so lodging, maybe a restaurant, maybe transportation, maybe attendance at an event. Whatever you can do to send pre-arrival information about what they should expect in terms of timing and logistics, any kind of documentation that they might need, or payment methods, trying to be transparent about all of the charges that are going to be included, and whether or not tipping is a standard practice. Try to simplify your processes. So simplifying like a check-in process, explaining policy, so reservations, cancellations, returns. When possible, be flexible. For example, on the check-in, somebody who's been traveling internationally might be arriving in the morning. They might have like flown all night and need an early check-in and not be able to wait until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or if they have to wait until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, being able to stow luggage somewhere. And then being able to be found online and being able to get as much information online, being mobile friendly. Again, also having links for information about transportation, things to do, restaurants, activities in the area, businesses in the area. You might need to have might be helpful in some instances to have some some currency adapters. I know when I've traveled, sometimes they've worked and sometimes the ones that I brought with me haven't. So it's great to have those. If you're in lodging, being able to have somebody who can help, like even if you're a coffee shop or a restaurant, having somebody who can help answer some questions about Wi-Fi access, being able to answer questions about safety. Is it safe to go out and walk at night? What are some areas that are particularly safe? What are some areas that maybe wouldn't be recommended for walking or for walking at night? So anticipating the questions that people are going to have in advance on the basis of what are they looking to enjoy? What types of experiences are they wanting to create? What are the things that create challenges for them? And then trying to find ways to be helpful. So some ways that businesses and communities can build welcoming, memorable experiences for their international travelers are anticipating cultural differences. And so when, for example, you know that you're going to have people from certain countries coming in for sporting events or for festivals, or maybe you've got business travelers coming in from a certain region. Learn what you can about the cultures and anticipate what cultural differences you might encounter in terms of communication style, in terms of dietary preferences. In terms of what types of activities they're looking for. Like, are they likely to be, even if they're a business traveler, if they have some time for leisure that gets added onto it, or if they're a vacation traveler, there are certain things that they might be looking for more likely depending on where they come from. And so, are they coming from Switzerland and likely to be looking for outdoor activities, or are they coming here from someplace where they're really going to be wanting to go out and be maximizing their shopping opportunities? Whatever opportunity you have to learn about customer preferences and needs in advance is very helpful. Not all businesses have this opportunity, but some do. So, for example, a restaurant that's taking reservations can inquire about whether this is going to be for business or whether it's going to be for leisure or for a special occasion, and make adjustments on those kinds of basis. Some businesses that might not normally take reservations might take reservations when there's going to be like high intensity of international travel. Find out about dietary restrictions or dietary preferences, whether they're traveling with children, whether there are any accessibility needs, so that you can try to make accommodations in advance where needed, but also trying to create a personalized experience. And then if you have any opportunity to find out about what their interests are, and help them design packages, or have special treats or special activities, or help connect them with tours, or make recommendations for other businesses or attractions that they might visit. And then also, really being somebody who's knowledgeable about your local attractions, and also neighboring communities, and trying to have ideas for family type activities or activities for people of different ages or different interests. So is this like a foodie, or is it an adventure enthusiast, or somebody who's really looking to get immersed in arts and culture? What do you have available for people of different abilities so that you can be inclusive? And then being able to offer choices So we talked a little bit about people wanting, authentic regional foods, local foods, things that really feel American while they're here. Um, if you've got something that you excel at, then offer what you excel at. But you might also like think about like how are there ways that this can be something that is has a gluten-free option, or is this something where we can have an attractive vegetarian option that's not just a bowl of lettuce, or what can we do to try to accommodate guests who want halal food, or who want kosher food. So again, anticipating those needs and focusing on the things that you already excel at, but being able to offer some choices to be accommodating where possible. That's really something that can be very helpful for people. Being well organized and efficient, that's something that international travelers look for when they're traveling and interacting with businesses. But to the extent possible, also have the ability to be flexible. For example, in the times that you offer meals or offer check-in, or with the cancellation policies. It's not saying that you always have that ability, but when you can, be flexible where reasonable. And then something that's also really important that goes along with the professionalism is responsiveness. So if you're aware of some kind of dissatisfaction, try to respond quickly to the concerns or complaints, and do what you can to address them, again, so people feel like they're being seen and appreciated and heard. And it may be that there's just a misunderstanding. They don't understand that you can make an option for them that's not on the menu, or there was some misunderstanding about what they were looking for. Get those types of things addressed so that people can have that good, positive, memorable experience. And then again, going back to some of the points that we talked about at the beginning of keeping in mind that international travelers' perspective, particularly if they're here for the first time, that this is something that's, maybe a bucket list type item, that they're really investing in coming here. They want that great, memorable, shareable experience. Be friendly, be helpful, be efficient, be welcoming. They want to have an experience that feels authentic. And so some of the advice might sound like, telling you to do things that are different or not being who you are. And that's not the point of it. The point is to try to, help make the connections with the international travelers while still being authentic. But being appreciative of how things might be perceived from their perspective. Then again, being welcoming when you can, use their names, acknowledge where they're from, be curious, try to find ways to connect, express gratitude for coming and visiting, and for sharing time with you, for visiting your business, for being in your community. And then remember that even small gestures of thoughtfulness can really go a long way. And so, like, for example, one hotel that I was staying in when I was traveling internationally, the person who cleaned my room noticed that I was reading a book, and the hotel had these custom bookmarks that were very, very attractive and thoughtful, and had like a positive message from the hotel on them. Or sometimes they'll leave like little teeny candies or little teeny gifts, or having those personalized maps, or putting putting together a personalized package, like finding some way to be, show a little bit of extra thoughtfulness can really go a long way. So we have had a couple of other webinars in this series. And I've got a typo in this one. How to market to international travelers, menu creation for international palettes, dishes, and presentation, how to develop rapport with international travelers, understanding dietary restrictions and preferences of international travelers, cultural aspects of French business communication, the halal supply chain. These are available on our webpage for Kansas Department of Commerce international webinars. And then we are also going to be offering more in terms of regional specific and country specific webinars to help understand some of more deeply some of those cultural dynamics that we were talking about here today. So I'm happy to engage in discussion, hear your ideas about how businesses can be welcoming and address international traveler needs. Well, if there aren't any questions or comments, I'll just thank you again for being here today. I appreciate your time and your interest and look forward to staying connected. So thank you so much.
Excuse me. I have a question. My name is Michael Glenn. I'm a reporter with the Eudora Times. I was curious if the department had any advice about how smaller communities who could be impacted by sports tourism could help prepare for these international visitors.
Yeah, great. So, thank you. Our tourism division is definitely working with communities across the state of Kansas. And so I would recommend connecting with our tourism division to find out what things are already happening and how to connect and how to promote, because it is important, when communities have interesting things that are going on to promote them. And then there are also different. So I guess I could ask you for clarification about whether you're interested in how to connect with events that are already happening, like the matches that are going to be going on this summer, or whether you're thinking about ways to create new sports tourism in a particular community. So those are, there's how do you connect? One question is, how do you connect with big events that are already happening and get, when there are travelers coming in from out of the country who might be here for, 10 days or 2 weeks or something like that, how do you get them to go outside of the major metro areas and visit the smaller communities and appreciate, what is to offer in those? And another is how can the smaller communities develop their own sports tourism? Did you have a particular direction that you were interested in going with that question?
Yes. It was your first option. How can smaller communities sort of convince or interest a visitor into venturing out into smaller communities rather than staying in the metro area only?
Yeah, good. So a couple of recommendations are thinking about what the attraction is going to be, and so, or what's the pull going to be. So is it going to be history? Is it going to be dining? Is it going to be Americana? Is it going to be a festival? Is it going to be activities? What's going to be the draw? And then also thinking about How can they, how can they be connected to each other? And also like how you can work with neighboring communities, and then understanding how you're going to get that message out there. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a webinar on the marketing strategies. So um, um, kind of the baseline is making sure that this information is available on the internet, that people can find it when they search. And then, making sure that tourism knows about it, connecting with potential tour operators, maybe connecting with businesses that in the Kansas City metro area that might be able to, give referrals or help create travel packages or itineraries. Or one of the things that I mentioned today was coming up with, having businesses or communities come up with maps of things that are interesting to do. Thinking about like, how could you put together something like that, maybe like, here's a recommended route that we are on, and here are some things to do on that route, and here are some things to do while you're here with us. And then, sharing it online, sharing it with businesses, sharing the ideas with tourism, and finding ways to create partnerships through that so that businesses within your community can support each other, and also clusters of communities can support each other in those efforts. But, making sure that the information can be found online, making sure that other businesses know about it, making sure that tourism knows about it, making sure that tour operators know about it. Those are some ways. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
And then, again, also thinking about like, what's going to be that pull. So if we go back to the idea of, what are the international travelers going to be, looking for? How can you find ways to make coming to your community something that's a memorable, shareable experience? What is it that they're going to enjoy and find unique and memorable, and really feel welcome while they're there?
Thank you.
My pleasure. Also love to hear your ideas. And, if, I talked about the importance of your community reaching out to tourism, because our tourism division really promotes what's going on in the state of Kansas. But if anybody would like to reach out to us at the international division for ideas or market research or background information, we'd be happy to help. Oh, yes, Carrie, thank you for mentioning that. That is another perception of Americans, that Americans are very, very loud, especially when we travel. So that is another thing to be aware of and sensitive to. So, like on the one hand, there's the like, how do we adapt to make sure that people have a good experience, and not, take offense or think we're too loud, but also, still be authentic. So it's, it's an interesting balance to create. But yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. That was something I had meant to mention. Well, and then also just a closing thought is, really enjoying the experience of the international guests, and having the opportunity to engage in the international hospitality and make the connections with our international visitors. Just enjoying the moment, making the most of it. So everybody, thank you so much. Love to stay in touch with you and appreciate you being here today.